Hello everybody, it's Nick here with Nick Tolman Music, and today we're going to go ahead and continue our beginner guitar lesson series using Mel Bay's Modern Guitar Method, Grade 1. Today we're going to be looking at page 37. 37 has some good new material in here for us, and it also has some good exercises for us to learn. So starting out, the very first thing that we're going to talk about on page 37 is a couple new chords. Okay, so at the top of the page it says chords in the key of G. And it gives us 3 chords. Now these are not the only chords in the key of G, but these are 3 very commonly used chords in the key of G. So you have what we would call the 1 chord, or the tonic chord, which is based off of the root, the G chord, right? Now if you look at the chord symbol here, the easiest way for you to familiarize yourself with this chord is to think of the G7 chord, which we already know. And it's almost the same, right? You're just, instead of having your first finger down here on F, you're going to have your 4th finger up here on G. Okay, so instead of first finger on F, 4th finger on G. So from bottom to top, you have your 3rd finger that's going to be on the low G, on the 3rd fret of the E string down here. Your 2nd finger will be on B, 2nd fret of the 5th string. Then you have 3 open strings, and then your 4th finger will be right here on the 3rd fret of the high E string on the note G. That is your G chord. Now just a quick note about the G chord, and this is one reason that I love the Mel Bay method. There are so many method books out there, and I've used several over the years of being a guitar teacher. And one big beef that I have with a lot of method books is that they teach students right out of the gate to play the G chord with this other fingering, right? With the 2nd finger on the low G, 1st finger, and 3rd finger. I get so frustrated with that. And yes, that is an easier fingering for most people. Like right out of the gate, you just want to learn G, that's an easier fingering. But the fingering shown here in Mel Bay is a more functional fingering, both in the key of G and in the key of C. So I would stick with this fingering, okay? Just use it like that. If you see a chord chart somewhere that shows you differently, to play your 2nd finger on the low G, your 1st finger on the B, and then your 3rd finger back here on the high G, like that, and then you're not doing anything with your 4th finger. I mean, you can try it, but I would not practice that as your norm. Even if it's easier, I would take the road less traveled here and use this fingering that's here, because it is going to be good. The reason I like it so much is because we're always going to be using the G chord in association with C. Whether you're in the key of C or G, it's going to be a common thing, right? So that takes us to our next chord. We've already learned the C chord, right? So we don't need to talk about that a lot. But with the fingering that we're doing here, to move to the C chord, it's almost a non-movement, right? All you're going to do is take your 2nd and 3rd finger, move them each up 1 string, and you're going to drop your 1st finger on C, and there you go. It's so smooth and so easy. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. But if you're playing this other fingering, that move to C is an enormous change, right? That in and of itself is so much more challenging. To me, it's not worth to do that, okay? Now, there are some situations where you might use this, okay? It's really common to do this thing where you put your D in the chord 2, and if you want that sound, it's a really kind of common sound. You might come into a situation where you need to do this alternate kind of fingering. Recently on my YouTube channel, I did a cover of Dear Theodosia from the musical Hamilton, and I played G like that in that musical. And because I wanted that sound, and because I wanted to keep that D and G in when I moved to the C, give you that kind of C add 9, as well as when I did the E minor. Anyways, that does exist, be aware of it, but for now, just kind of stick with this fingering. So we've got the G chord, we've got the C chord. Again, the C chord. This I'm not talking all this good stuff about Mel Bay. I love you for putting this fingering in on G. But then they go to the C chord here and they tell you that you're going to strum an open E on your C chord. No, that's not the case. I mean, you can, but that is not the standard. In general, you're going to have the root as the bass note, and that doesn't happen if you strum this low E. So when you're looking at the chord diagram here and it says, has the little open symbol over the low E, disregard that. That should be an X, okay? For G. As the norm, okay, as the norm. There will be times, and there can be times when you incorporate that low E into your C chord, but that's not the norm. All right, then we're gonna move to D7, which is a new chord here, all right? Also, again, I don't know why Mel Bay does this. I've been trying to figure it out for years. If anyone knows the answer, please comment below. But D7, the low E and the low A should both have X's, okay? They should both have X's. You're not gonna strum the low A as the base of the chord as a norm. Okay, so D7, your lowest note should be open D, and then you've got A here with your second finger on the third string, and then you've got C with your first finger on the second string, and then you've got F sharp with your third finger here on the first string, and then you strum the top 4 strings. There's your D7. So we have G, C, D7. Nice, and with that fingering, that's such a smooth transition with that progression, right? G to C, again, we're just gonna move our third and second finger up 1 string, drop our first finger onto C, lift up on your 4th finger, you have a C chord. Now when we move from C to D7, the note that is going to be constant, I mean, if you look, there's 1 finger that doesn't change, right? And that is your first finger. So just leave it there. That's your anchor for that change, right? From C, you're going to take your second and third finger and you're just going to move, right? But that first finger will stay anchored. Got your D7 chord, which is the dominant 5 chord, which leads back to G. G, C, D7, and there you go. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this next exercise, or this first exercise, I should say. Accompaniment styles in the key of G. All right, so this is just going to kind of walk you through some bass chord strumming situations that you might run into in the key of G utilizing these new chords, all right? Take as much time as you need to on this to feel comfortable with these new chords, and let's give it a shot. So here it is at 72 on the metronome. I will play the repeats, so here we go. 1, 2, ready and play. There we go. So that is accompaniment styles in the key of G at 72. Now there are a couple new things in here that we have not seen before, and obviously the first being that we're using new chords, and that's fine. You'll familiarize yourself with those. That's not a problem. If you look down at the bottom, we do have the 2/4 time signature. Okay, and we talked about that in our last lesson, and here it is. It's appeared. 2/4. It's not that big a deal. You have 2 beats in every measure rather than 3 or 4 like we've seen in the past. So that shouldn't trip you up too much. That is kind of an abrupt jump into that eighth note alternating bass pattern. But that's okay. That's not a problem. You'll catch that. It's just kind of a jump from doing all the quarter notes into eighth notes all of a sudden. But the big thing here is this symbol. It has a little note about it right below the exercise. It says this sign, and it looks like this, means that the previous measure is to be repeated. Okay, so that symbol, whenever you see that in a measure, that just means that you're going to do the same thing as you did in the last measure again. Okay, it's just a notation tool to keep like less busyness on the page. It's like, okay, so that first measure we went, you're just going to do that again. And then you move to the next measure. And then you see the symbol again saying, hey, that previous measure, do that again. So don't let that freak you out. That's what that is, okay? You see this really commonly whenever there's like a pattern that's being set up and it's just wanting you to kind of repeat this pattern. So you can actually see this symbol with numbers associated with it. So you can see the symbol with like a 2 above it. And that would mean like repeat the previous 2 measures again, okay? Just kind of watch out for that is a thing. You'll see that pretty commonly. So, all right, there's a little note here. And it says, the following etude introduces the notes D and B being played together. This is done by playing the note D with the first finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string and playing the note B with the 2nd finger on the 4th fret of the 3rd string. Okay, you have these notes stacked, right? You have a D and a B. And you might be like, how on earth do I play those at the same time? They're on the same string, right? So all you have to do is you have to play that B, which would normally be open on the 2nd string. You got to play that on the 4th fret of the G string. Now it specifically says like 1st and 2nd finger, and that's fine. That's what we'll do with this exercise. It doesn't have to be those 2 fingers, right? It could be 2nd and 3rd or 3rd and 4th, right? Depending on what you're doing. It could be a variation of options there, but that's how you play those 2 notes together. So again, like it's showing in this little gray box, the B is going to be played on the 4th fret of the G string, or the 3rd string, and then D will be played where it usually is on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. That's how you play those notes together. So in this next duet, we have this little thing that goes, and that's what it's wanting you to do is shift. So play G and B together, A and C together, and then you just shift that shape up to play B and D. Now again, in some other cases you might use a different finger setup, but for now it's just going to be right. That'll be that. So here is Etude Part 1 at 72 on the metronome. 1, 2, ready and play. so that's 72 on the metronome, and really it's pretty straightforward. It's really highlighting that move, that shift that we're talking about. The only other thing to really kind of watch out for in there is that you have this thing like in the third measure. We have F sharp and A, right? And actually in the example there, I just played it two different ways for you. So I did it, the first half I was playing it staying in first position, so I was doing the F sharp with my fourth finger and the A with my second finger. But then I switched about halfway through to doing it in second position, so F sharp with my third finger and A with my first finger. Which honestly I think is more comfortable, and it makes sense to do that too, because I think in every case, not in every case, in almost every case in there, you're coming from just playing that B and D together up here in third position, right? So that shift from third to like an awkward fourth finger thing in first position is a big old jump. But from the B and D to just a second position, F sharp A, it's an easier move to me. Now I can't even do it. Anyway, so that's something to kind of play with. You can do it either way, but that's that. So sorry, it's a really cloudy day today, and usually I get my light in from the window, and we're fighting lots of cloudiness, so the lighting probably keeps changing in these videos today. But yeah, the last thing to watch out for here on this one is just that you do have that D7 chord. So the last measure of the first line, you have that G chord, and then yeah, it's just D7 fingering. You've got A, C, and F sharp, like we learned in this lesson. Just use that regular D7 fingering, and then there. That's basically everything to watch out for on that. All right, let's go and try the bottom line at 72. 1, 2, ready and play. Rest. There we go. So that's that at 72. And with this one, it really is just utilizing those chords that we've learned, right? The first couple measures are just outlining a G chord. You can actually leave for that pattern. Just set up in a G chord like we learned today. And you'll just have to lift that second finger off when you play that A. And then and some notes, A, B, C, D, B, C, B, and then we go to a D7 chord with the root in the bass, and then the A in the bass, root in the bass, A in the bass, then G, fancy. It's really just a G and a D7 chord that you're using in there. All right, here is what the two parts at 72 sound like together. 1, 2, ready, and play. Okay, so let's go ahead and try part 1 at 120 on the metronome. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, and... So there's part 1 at 120. Let's go ahead and try part 2 at the same tempo. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, and... Alright, so actually I realized that I missed something on there when I played it at 72, and it's in the third measure of the second line on part 2. It's a real quick shift, G to D7. I think I just stayed on G and just played the... Anyways, so... Yeah, I think I maybe messed that up on the other part, but that's alright. But there you go, so that's the bottom line at 120, and here's what they sound like together. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, and... So as usual, whenever you're learning new chords especially, just kind of give yourself some grace. Like, it might take you a while to get comfortable with the chord shapes. You will find that the more chords you learn, the more similar new chords are to ones that you already know. And so it shouldn't take you necessarily as long as in the past. But don't be surprised if all of a sudden this takes you a little bit of time because you're not super comfortable with the chord shapes. Again, if you're struggling with these chord shapes, take it way back, turn the metronome off, and just focus on playing chords and moving between the chords, right? G, C, G, C, G, C, as many times as you need to make those changes quick and smooth, right? This part of learning guitar, whenever you're adding new chords and stuff, is always kind of grueling a little bit. You know, you have to just go slow and just do the painstaking work. But as you do, it gives you the ability to incorporate these new concepts into your playing and make it much easier and better for you in the long run. So try not to get ahead of yourself. Don't let yourself continue and try to get faster if you're still having gaps between chords or having a struggle. Like every time you go to the G chord, it comes out sounding like all dead. You know, take your time just getting it to sound good and be as slow and methodical as you can about incorporating that into real playing. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions or you need any extra help, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll do my best to help you out in this capacity as best I can. Okay, so thank you for tuning in today. As always, please subscribe. If you haven't already checked out my website, www.nicktolmanmusic.com, please do. I have extra resources on there to help you as you are learning guitar. It's a new website. Basically, all my resources on there are like 99-cent downloads. I have extra scale exercises, extra chord exercises, music note reading exercises to help you understand rhythms and to kind of walk through stuff. So it's like extra help in addition to what you might be learning in the Mel Bay book. So, all right. Thank you so much again, and we will see you next time.